The scent of pine needles and damp earth filled the cool morning air, a fragrance I cherished, as I sat at our rustic pine kitchen table, carefully signing school permission slips for our 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Sunlight streamed through the large picture window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and overlooking the breathtaking expanse of Serenity Lake. The water shimmered peacefully, its surface disturbed only by the occasional concentric ripple of a jumping fish or the silent V-wake of a distant loon making its solitary journey across the cove. Our cabin, nestled amongst towering pines on a secluded, rocky point accessible only by a long, winding private driveway, wasn't luxurious by the standards of the sprawling mansions further down the shore, but it was unequivocally ours. A hard-won sanctuary Cal and I had painstakingly renovated ourselves, transforming it from a dilapidated structure into a cozy, welcoming home. It felt miles away, worlds away, from the nearest town, and, we had naively thought, completely insulated from the kind of petty neighborhood politics and intrusive regulations that plagued subdivisions. We cherished the profound privacy, the deep, quiet connection to the rhythms of nature, and the clear, cold waters where my husband, Cal, now found his peace running a small, personalized fishing guide business after retiring early from a demanding career he rarely spoke about in detail, a past veiled in quiet competence and an aversion to crowds. That cherished peace shattered abruptly, violently. Gravel crunched loudly, aggressively, on our long driveway, an unfamiliar, unwelcome sound in this usually silent haven. I glanced up from the permission slips, frowning, annoyance momentarily outweighing concern, expecting perhaps a lost delivery truck driver navigating poorly. Instead, my breath hitched, and my heart gave a sudden, sickening lurch. 3 large, dark, imposing SUVs, the kind favored by government agencies or corporate security details, were rolling purposefully, almost silently despite their bulk, down the final stretch towards the cabin. Discreet, pulsating blue strobe lights, utterly incongruous and alarming in the tranquil lakeside setting, flashed rhythmically from behind their tinted windshields. They pulled to a stop with practiced precision in a tight semicircle directly facing the cabin, effectively blocking the entire driveway, an unmistakable posture of intimidation. Doors opened almost in perfect, disquieting unison, and 6 individuals emerged, 4 men and 2 women, all clad in crisp, new-looking tan and black uniforms that superficially resembled county sheriff's deputy attire but felt subtly wrong to my eye, lacking the familiar county patches and standard-issue gear. They wore heavy utility belts laden with equipment, sturdy boots, and uniformly stern, impassive expressions. One man, older than the others, with a severe, military-style haircut and carrying a prominent clipboard, stepped forward, clearly assuming the lead role. He paused, adjusting the shiny badge pinned conspicuously to his chest. It glinted sharply in the morning sun, but something about its overly simple design and generic numbering felt immediately off, suspect. My hand instinctively flew to the sturdy landline phone resting on the counter beside the permission slips, my pulse quickening to a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This felt intensely wrong, staged, overtly threatening. Lily was already safely at school, thank God, dropped off an hour earlier, and Cal was out on the vast lake with a fishing client, miles away in the quiet, secluded northern coves he favored for finding trophy bass, far beyond easy reach or quick return. I was completely, utterly alone. I watched, frozen for a moment behind the perceived safety of the window glass, as the group conferred briefly amongst themselves, their movements efficient but lacking the relaxed confidence of legitimate authority. Then, without warning, 2 of them immediately broke off and began unspooling spools of bright orange, flimsy-looking plastic fencing, starting near the edge of the dense woods bordering our property line and moving with deliberate speed towards our small, private sandy beach area. Simultaneously, 2 other men walked purposefully towards our dock, carrying heavy-looking tools. I could now make out a crowbar and what looked ominously like a portable demolition saw. The leader, clipboard man, and one of the women detached from the group and started walking directly, purposefully, towards the cabin's front door. Taking a deep, ragged breath to steady my violently trembling nerves, I forced myself to move. I met them on the covered porch, stepping outside into the cool air but deliberately leaving the main cabin door slightly ajar behind me. A small, perhaps foolish, concession to a potential retreat. "Can I help you?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain even, striving to betray none of the raw anxiety churning like ice water in my stomach. The lead man, Thorne, stopped a few feet away, his cold, assessing eyes sweeping over me, then the cabin, then the lake view behind me, a flicker of something avaricious in his gaze before it settled back into impassive authority. "Ma'am," he began, his tone deliberately officious, dripping with condescension, "I am Senior Compliance Officer Thorne. We are official representatives of the Serenity Lake Property Owners Association's Enforcement Division." He tapped the shiny badge pin to his chest again. The one I now saw clearly read SLPOA Enforcement Division. The badge number, 001, seemed almost comically generic, fueling my suspicion. "Are you Sarah Martell, the resident here?" "I am," I confirmed cautiously, folding my arms defensively across my chest. "Property Owners Association? I think you're mistaken. This property," I gestured firmly around us, encompassing the cabin, the trees, the shoreline, "is not part of any HOA. We own these 12 acres outright, deeded free and cleared decades before the Serenity Lake Estates development was even conceived miles further down the shore." Officer Thorne merely allowed himself a thin, humorless smile, the expression not reaching his cold eyes. "An understandable misconception, ma'am, but that situation has been rectified under a recent association expansion vote and duly recorded bylaw amendment. As per this official community eminent domain order," he produced a thick, multi-page document from his clipboard with a theatrical flourish, holding it out towards me. "The Serenity Lake Property Owners Association has exercised its legally ratified right to annex this specific shoreline parcel, defined as approximately 100 feet inland from the current high water mark, for the purposes of essential community benefit and improvement. Specifically, the development of a private, members-only marina and associated clubhouse facility." My jaw dropped. I felt the blood drain from my face. Community, eminent domain, an HOA annexing private, deeded land? That's utterly impossible. That's theft. This is our private property. We have the deed, recorded clear at the county. "Formerly private property, ma'am," Thorne corrected smoothly, his voice unwavering, holding the document closer as if expecting me to take it. "This legally binding order, ratified by the SLPOA board according to established procedures and filed accordingly with the relevant authorities, supersedes prior deeds for the demonstrable greater good and enhanced value of the community association members and their shared assets. We are here today simply to secure the annexed parcel peacefully. We request you please refrain from interfering with this official association action." I stared numbly at the document he held out. It looked vaguely official superficially, filled with dense paragraphs referencing obscure bylaws, stamped with what looked like a notary's seal, replete with dense legalese, but the core premise, community eminent domain being wielded by a private homeowners association, sounded completely fraudulent, a perversion of legal principles. Real eminent domain was a serious, complex, highly regulated governmental power, subject to strict public use requirements and due process, not something a private organization like an HOA could just declare to seize valuable lakefront property belonging to a non-member. This had to be the audacious, illegal, desperate work of Agnes Thornfield. Agnes, the imperious, grasping president of the Serenity Lake POA, a wealthy property developer known for her ruthless tactics and obsession with expanding the HOA's influence and control around the entire lake. We'd heard the persistent rumors, dismissed them as unlikely gossip, that she desperately coveted our secluded, undeveloped point for her personal vanity project, a luxury private marina and exclusive clubhouse facility that would significantly boost the value and desirability of her own extensive lakefront real estate holdings nearby. This brazen, uniformed land grab, cloaked in fraudulent legality, screamed her involvement. "This document is a fraud, and you know it," I stated firmly, finding my voice again, fueled by a surge of righteous anger that momentarily overcame my fear. "This action is illegal. You are trespassing on private property under false pretenses. I demand you and your team leave immediately before I contact the county sheriff." Thorne's thin smile vanished completely, replaced by a hard, menacing glint in his eyes. "Our orders are clear, lawful, and legally ratified, ma'am. Interference will not be tolerated. My team will proceed with securing the designated community parcel as mandated." He gestured dismissively, almost contemptuously, towards the lakefront again. The bright orange plastic fencing was already stretching aggressively across our small sandy beach, an ugly, vibrant scar on the otherwise pristine natural landscape. Worse, the high-pitched whine of the portable demolition saw intensified, accompanied by the sickening crunch of wood splintering. The two men down at the dock were rapidly cutting through the thick, pressure-treated wooden support posts of the dock. Cal had spent countless weekends building by hand, piece by loving piece. Another team member, one of the women, was now pacing back and forth along the new fence line, speaking into a handheld radio, while occasionally glancing up at the small, sophisticated quadcopter drone hovering almost silently high overhead, undoubtedly providing a real-time, bird's-eye view for someone not physically present, almost certainly Agnes herself, monitoring her illicit operation from afar. Panic, cold and sharp, warred fiercely with rising, helpless anger. They were actually doing it. They were fencing off our land, actively destroying our property, right before my eyes, based on a document I knew was fraudulent. I needed Cal. Not just my husband, the fishing guide, but the other Cal, the one whose existence was defined by quiet competence forged in the crucible of unseen conflicts, the man who knew how to handle threats decisively. I backed slowly, deliberately into the cabin, never taking my eyes off Thorne, and quickly, firmly locked the heavy deadbolt. My hands trembled violently as I snatched the landline phone from the kitchen counter. Cell service was spotty out here. There was no time to waste hoping for a potentially slow 911 response to our remote location. These imposters could do irreparable damage, could potentially even try to enter the cabin, before legitimate help navigated the winding county roads. I needed Cal's specific expertise, his unique skill set, immediately. I sent him the short, previously established coded text message via the satellite phone interface app, praying the signal held. Code read, "Shoreline compromised. Hostile enforcement. Alone." To add immediate visual context and underscore the severity, I quickly snapped a shaky photo through the window, showing the uniformed figures advancing, the encroaching orange fence, the men actively attacking the dock supports, and attached it before hitting send, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. Miles away in the profound quiet of the northern cove of Serenity Lake, Cal was patiently demonstrating a particular deep-water jigging technique, explaining the subtle wrist movements needed to entice lethargic summer bass, when his rugged satellite phone chirped insistently with the unmistakable, high-priority alert tone assigned exclusively to my number. Seeing the stark, code red flash urgently on the screen alongside the familiar, unambiguous emergency keywords, his relaxed, easygoing fishing guide demeanor evaporated instantly, vanishing as if it had never existed. Years of intense, deeply ingrained SEAL training stripped away the casual facade, replaced in a fraction of a second by the quiet, intense, almost unnervingly calm focus of an operator assessing an immediate, unexpected, and potentially lethal threat. He glanced quickly, analytically, at the photo I'd sent, his eyes narrowing as he rapidly processed the details. The uniforms, close, but fundamentally wrong. The aggressive postures suggesting hostile intent. The orange fencing already encroaching significantly onto his private land. Something was dangerously, fundamentally wrong back home. His family, his sanctuary, was under direct threat. "Bob," he said calmly, his voice perfectly level but carrying a new, undeniable weight, a sudden intensity that startled his middle-aged client mid-cast. "My deepest apologies, but we have a critical emergency situation back at my cabin that requires my immediate, urgent return. The fishing trip's over right now, no charge, obviously. I need to get you back safely to the public launch ramp immediately. It's much closer than heading all the way back to my place first." The client, Bob, a retired accountant who had fished with Cal several times before, saw the sudden, profound, almost frightening shift in Cal's usually relaxed demeanor. The stillness in his posture, the razor-sharp focus in his eyes, the complete absence of his usual easygoing charm. He nodded instantly, without question or complaint, reeling in his line rapidly. Of course, Cal understood completely. Let's go. Whatever you need. Cal nodded curtly, already stowing gear with practiced, economical speed. He opened the throttle on his powerful but surprisingly quiet specialized guide boat, the vessel rising smoothly onto plane and skimming rapidly, purposefully across the glassy water towards the nearest public access point several miles south. After ensuring Bob was safely ashore, shaking his hand briefly and confirming he had arranged for his own transport home, Cal spun the boat around and headed back towards our point at maximum safe speed. However, he didn't aim directly for the cabin's now compromised shoreline. As he neared our cove, he cut the engine far out on the lake, letting the boat's momentum carry it silently through the water while he raised a pair of heavy, military-grade gyrostabilized binoculars, specialized equipment far exceeding anything needed for finding fish, and began meticulously, patiently surveying our property from the relative safety and concealment of the water. He saw the 3 dark SUVs parked aggressively near the cabin, confirming their hostile posture. He saw the bright orange fence snaking garishly across the beach, a blatant violation. He saw the 2 men actively working on the dock supports with power tools, their movements hurried and destructive. He saw the figures still lingering near the cabin, Thorne pacing back and forth, the woman speaking into a radio. He noted their movements, their lack of professional coordination, their sloppy formations, the way they seemed focused only on their immediate tasks, not on maintaining situational awareness or perimeter security. Then, his eyes narrowed further, his focus sharpening to pinpoint intensity. Through the incredibly powerful, stabilized optics, focused intently, patiently on the long gun one of the men near the dock held casually slung over his shoulder while his partner operated the saw, Cal spotted the telltale, unmistakable signs invisible to the naked, untrained eye. The bulky CO2 air cartridge attachment point near the stock, the specific, non-standard shape of the magazine, well, which wouldn't accept standard rifle ammunition. Paintball carbines. Likely high-end tournament models, crudely spray-painted matte black to mimic the intimidating appearance of tactical rifles. Dangerous certainly, capable of causing serious injury, welts, or eye damage at close range, and undeniably effective tools of intimidation against the unaware, but crucially, not lethal firearms. A vital, game-changing distinction. These weren't real deputies armed with service weapons engaged in a legitimate, albeit legally disputed, action. They were impostors, likely poorly trained security guards or common thugs hired for a specific, illegal purpose, equipped specifically for intimidation and deception, not a genuine law enforcement operation or a sustained firefight. And they were actively, brazenly, illegally destroying his property under demonstrably false, fraudulent authority. Cal brought the specialized boat around in a wide, silent arc, using the deep water channel and the shoreline topography to stay completely hidden from any potential shoreline observers, approaching our point from the heavily wooded, rocky southern side, the opposite direction from where the impostors and their vehicles were concentrated. He expertly, silently nosed the boat's reinforced bow gently into a tiny, hidden, almost invisible inlet choked with overhanging cedars and dense shoreline brush, a natural hideaway only he knew existed from his years exploring every remote inch of Serenity Lake's vast shoreline. He cut the main engine completely, letting the boat glide the last few feet in utter, water-lapping silence, secured only by the dense natural camouflage surrounding it. He moved with the practiced, economical, almost preternatural stealth of a ghost, slipping ashore onto the rocky bank without a sound, carrying only a small, rugged, waterproof tactical pack slung over one shoulder. He wasn't armed with a conventional firearm. He hadn't felt the need nor the desire to carry one routinely since leaving the demanding, often violent world of naval special warfare years ago, deliberately choosing the profound peace and quiet solitude of the lake instead. But his pack contained a carefully selected suite of specialized tools honed over years of reconnaissance, surveillance, target observation, and sensitive site exploitation, a compact, ruggedized high-resolution digital camera equipped with a powerful, stabilized telephoto lens capable of capturing clear images at extreme distances. A small, folding tactical observation mirror similar to what snipers use for safely observing around corners or over obstacles without exposing themselves. A sophisticated, military-grade laser rangefinder capable of pinpoint accuracy and data recording at considerable distances. And a bundle of heavy-duty, disposable plastic cuffs, zip-tie-style restraints far stronger and more reliable than standard consumer versions. He moved inland swiftly through the dense, shadowed woods fringing the shoreline, utilizing the terrain, the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy, the natural sounds of the forest, the rustle of dry leaves underfoot, minimized by his careful steps, the chatter of a nearby squirrel, the call of a distant bird, to mask his approach with effortless, deeply ingrained fieldcraft. He circled widely around behind the area where the impostors were noisily, obliviously working, their focus entirely directed towards their destructive tasks and the cabin. He found a perfect observation and staging position behind a large, moss-covered granite boulder deposited by ancient glaciers, offering excellent concealment from multiple angles and a clear, slightly elevated vantage point overlooking the entire unfolding scene. The 3 SUVs parked near the cabin, the fencing crew methodically progressing along the beach, the ongoing, destructive dock demolition. The figures still lingering near the cabin, including Thorne, who was now pacing back and forth, impatiently, occasionally glancing at his watch, and even the small, buzzing quadcopter drone hovering persistently high overhead like a malevolent electronic eye. Methodically, patiently, embodying the extreme discipline and unwavering focus required of his former profession, skills equally applicable to observing enemy positions or documenting criminal activity. Cal began his detailed intelligence-gathering operation. Using the small folding mirror angled carefully, minimally around the rough edge of the massive boulder, he avoided exposing himself directly while gaining a clear, comprehensive view of the entire area of operations. He used the laser rangefinder to silently acquire and record precise distances to each distinct group of individuals, the vehicles, and key terrain features, mentally mapping the area, assessing lines of sight and potential approach/withdrawal routes. Then, he raised the high-resolution camera, the long, heavy telephoto lens held perfectly steady in his experienced hands. Click! A clear, sharply focused, high-resolution shot of the lead imposter, Thorne, now arguing heatedly, gestures visible, with me through the cabin window which I had cracked open slightly again, foolishly attempting to reason with him, telling him repeatedly the real sheriff was definitely being called and his actions were illegal. Click! A perfect, frame-filling close-up of Thorne's crudely made fake badge, the generic number 001, and the bogus SLPOA Enforcement Division, text clearly, damningly legible. Click! One of the women, face tight with concentration, aggressively directing the fencing crew, her features captured in sharp, identifiable detail. Click! Click! Each of the 2 men actively sawing through the dock's main support posts, their faces clearly visible, tools in hand. Click! Another close-up, this time of the paintball carbine one had momentarily set down against a rock, clearly showing the distinctive air cartridge fitting near the stock and the non-standard receiver. Undeniable photographic proof it wasn't a real firearm, crucial evidence countering any potential claims of facing lethal force. Click! 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 Crystal clear shots of the license plates of all 3 dark SUVs parked conspicuously near the cabin. He even expertly zoomed in and captured multiple detailed images of the drone hovering high overhead, noting its specific make and model, likely requiring FAA registration, potentially providing another direct link back to its owner, Agnes Thornfield. He documented everything meticulously, methodically, capturing every identifiable face, every fake badge, every vehicle plate, every illegal action, every piece of incriminating equipment, building an undeniable, irrefutable, time-stamped visual record of the entire criminal operation unfolding on his property. Meanwhile, inside the relative safety of the locked cabin, my initial panic having somewhat subsided, replaced by a cold, simmering anger and the reassurance of Cal's brief acknowledgement text. Yin route ET, a 20-minute stay secure observe only. I had finally managed to connect with the County 911 dispatch center via the sometimes unreliable landline. I breathlessly, trying to keep my voice calm but firm, explained the terrifying situation. The arrival of multiple vehicles, the 6 individuals impersonating law enforcement officers with fake badges and uniforms, their presentation of a fraudulent community eminent domain, order claiming annexation of our private lakefront property, their refusal to leave, their ongoing trespassing, and, most critically, their active destruction of our dock and the erection of fencing on our beach. I emphasized the impersonation aspect and the bogus legal claim. The dispatcher, her tone shifting noticeably from routine call-taking to serious concern upon hearing the keywords impersonating officers and fraudulent court order, assured me she was dispatching multiple patrol units immediately, classifying it as a high-priority incident. However, she cautioned, as I had realistically expected, that the response time to our remote lakeside location could still be significant, potentially 30 minutes or even longer, depending on where the nearest patrol cars were currently located within the large, rural county. Every minute felt like an eternity. Cal, having thoroughly documented the scene from his concealed position and gathered all necessary visual intelligence onto the camera's secure memory card, now shifted his focus from passive observation to active assessment of the impostors' tactical posture, or, more accurately, their glaring lack thereof. They were sloppy, disorganized amateurs, clearly focused entirely on their assigned destructive tasks and relying solely on their fake uniforms and Thorne's projected, unearned authority. They were utterly confident in their perceived isolation, clearly not expecting any real resistance, effective surveillance, or imminent, competent intervention. He saw his window of opportunity, a chance to neutralize the immediate threat to his property nonviolently, secure the perpetrators on site for the arriving deputies, and preserve the crime scene and all evidence intact. Moving with the silent speed, fluid economy of motion, and utter confidence born from years operating undetected in the world's most dangerous environments, he emerged suddenly, unexpectedly from the dense woods directly behind the 2 men still noisily, obliviously working on sawing through the dock's main support posts, their backs completely turned towards his concealed approach vector. Before they could even register his presence, let alone react defensively, he had both of them efficiently subdued, a swift, precise application of leverage and pain compliance, and securely restrained back-to-back with the heavy-duty zip-tie restraints pulled painfully tight around their wrists, rendering them immobile. Their tools were kicked harmlessly aside into the water, their paintball guns quickly secured safely out of their reach against a nearby tree. He used a low, firm, authoritative voice they couldn't possibly ignore. Stay quiet. Don't move. You're detained for impersonating law enforcement officers and destruction of property. The 2 men, utterly startled, momentarily breathless from the takedown, and overwhelmed by his sudden, silent, expert neutralization, offered absolutely no resistance, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock, pain, and sudden, dawning fear. He moved rapidly, silently along the tree line towards the 2 still methodically stringing the orange fence along the beach. They looked up from their work, alerted perhaps by a muffled sound from the dock, or just sensing movement. They saw him approaching purposefully out of the woods, saw their 2 companions already bound and subdued near the ruined dock pilings. Their will to continue the charade, to maintain the pretense of authority, evaporated instantly. They dropped their fencing tools simultaneously, hands shooting high up in surrender before he even needed to issue a verbal command. He quickly secured them with zip ties as well, leaving all 4 detainees sitting uncomfortably, back-to-back in pairs near the water's edge, effectively neutralized. The 2 remaining impostors up by the SUVs, Thorne and the woman who had been near the cabin door earlier, finally saw the commotion down by the water, saw their entire work crew inexplicably subdued, and realized instantly, catastrophically, that something had gone drastically, unexpectedly wrong. They started shouting confusedly towards the beach, then moved uncertainly, hesitantly towards their vehicles, perhaps intending to flee, perhaps intending foolishly to retrieve something else, maybe even real weapons if they had any. Simultaneously, the quadcopter drone hovering high overhead suddenly zipped lower, its camera gimbal clearly swiveling to focus intently on Cal's position near the beach. Agnes Thornfield, watching her carefully orchestrated illegal operation unravel in real time on her remote feed, had seen her enforcers neutralized and likely knew her game was up. Precisely at that critical, tense moment, the distinct, unmistakable rising and falling wail of multiple official sirens echoed clearly across the lake, carrying easily in the still morning air from the direction of the main county road, growing rapidly louder as they turned onto our long driveway. Real help was arriving, fast. Cal straightened up from securing the last fence stringer, turning towards the remaining 2 impostors near the SUVs. He pointed clearly towards the sound of the rapidly approaching vehicles. "County Sheriff," he stated calmly, his voice carrying easily across the distance, projecting absolute confidence and control. "It's over. Stay exactly where you are. Keep your hands visible." Multiple county sheriff's department patrol cars arrived just moments later, lights flashing brilliantly, tires spitting gravel as they expertly, decisively blocked the 3 dark SUVs, cutting off any possibility of escape for Thorne and the woman. Deputies spilled out quickly, weapons initially drawn but held at a low ready as they rapidly assessed the unusual scene before them. They found a situation that clearly wasn't routine. For uniformed individuals zip-tied neatly, subdued near the heavily damaged dock and partially fenced beach. 2 more standing nervously with hands hesitantly raised by their vehicles, and Cal standing calmly nearby, directing the arriving deputies with quiet nods towards the restrained individuals. High overhead, a small consumer drone hovered erratically for another moment before suddenly descending rapidly towards the edge of the property line near the driveway entrance, clearly being recalled or attempting to flee. "Cal, what in God's name is going on out here?" Sheriff Brody demanded as he exited his lead vehicle, recognizing Cal immediately despite the bizarre circumstances, his experienced eyes quickly taking in the fake uniforms and the property damage. Cal quickly, concisely, professionally briefed the sheriff, a man he knew from town and respected as a competent lawman. The unexpected arrival of the fake deputies, their fraudulent uniforms and badges, the completely bogus eminent domain order they presented, the ongoing property destruction he interrupted, his confirmation of the paintball guns being used for intimidation, his non-lethal intervention to detain the active participants, and the presence of the drone providing real-time oversight for the operation's likely mastermind. He handed Sheriff Brody the small, high-capacity memory card from his camera containing the crystal-clear, time-stamped photographic evidence he had just meticulously gathered. As deputies efficiently secured Thorne and the woman, Mirandized all 6 detainees, and began processing the scene, retrieving the paintball carbines, the discarded tools, the fake documents, and carefully documenting the extensive damage to the dock and the illegal fencing. Another deputy equipped with specialized drone countermeasure gear intercepted the rapidly descending quadcopter near the driveway, jamming its signal and forcing it to land abruptly, relatively intact, near the edge of the woods. Standing beside the now-grounded drone, looking flustered, disheveled, and furiously red-faced, was a well-dressed, middle-aged woman who had apparently just arrived hastily via a hidden access trail from the main road after seeing her carefully orchestrated plan unravel disastrously on her remote drone feed. None other than Agnes Thornfield herself, president of the SLPOA, caught practically red-handed attempting to retrieve her incriminating surveillance device. Confronted directly on the scene by Sheriff Brody, who now held the obviously forged eminent domain order in one hand, and was simultaneously reviewing Cal's damning photographic evidence on a departmental mobile tablet with the other, Agnes immediately began bawling hysterically, alternating erratically between indignant denials of any wrongdoing, veiled threats about her powerful lawyers and political connections, and pathetic attempts to blame Thorne entirely for supposedly misinterpreting her instructions and exceeding his authority. It was a pathetic, utterly unconvincing performance. Back at the sheriff's station, the subsequent investigation proceeded swiftly and thoroughly under Sheriff Brody's direct supervision, aided significantly by Cal's initial actions and comprehensive evidence collection. Thorne, the self-styled senior compliance officer, facing a potential blizzard of serious felony charges and realizing immediately that Agnes Thornfield would readily sacrifice him without a second thought to save her own skin, folded completely during his initial hours-long interrogation conducted by Brody himself and a lead detective. He provided a detailed, recorded, and ultimately signed confession, outlining precisely how Agnes Thornfield had personally, repeatedly approached and then hired him and his unlicensed, marginally bonded security company, Thorn Security Solutions, for the specific, explicitly illegal purpose of forcibly seizing the Martell Lakefront property through deception and intimidation. He described in detail how Agnes, obsessed with her private marina project and deeply frustrated by her inability to acquire the Martell's strategically located land legally, had personally concocted the bizarre, community eminent domain scheme. She had even provided him with the professionally printed but utterly fraudulent legal documents, meticulously researched the closest legitimate uniform designs to copy, and gave him the exact specifications for the look-alike uniforms and fake badges, all intended to create an overwhelming, intimidating facade of official authority designed to quell resistance. Thorn admitted under oath that Agnes directed the entire operation remotely via encrypted radio communication and the live drone feed, explicitly instructing them to proceed rapidly with fencing off the property and beginning the highly visible demolition of the docks specifically to establish possession and control, before the Martells could mount any effective legal challenge or before legitimate law enforcement could possibly arrive and intervene. He confirmed unequivocally that the paintball guns were deliberately chosen by Agnes as the primary tools of intimidation, selected because they looked like real assault rifles from a distance, but crucially avoided potential manslaughter or murder charges if unintended injuries or panicked return fire occurred. Thorn readily provided access to his company's sparse, poorly kept financial records, which nonetheless clearly showed a recent large cash payment received from a shell corporation that Sheriff Brody's astute financial crimes detective quickly and definitively linked back, through 2 layers of transactions, to Agnes Thornfield's primary real estate development company, Thornfield Properties, LLC. The other 5 members of Thorn's hapless crew, individually interrogated and facing similar serious charges, though potentially less severe than Thorn's as mere employees acting under orders, presented with Thorn's detailed confession along with Cal's indisputable photographic evidence clearly showing their faces during the commission of multiple felonies, offered little resistance to investigators. They unanimously corroborated Thorn's account in almost every significant detail, many expressing palpable resentment and bitterness about being deliberately misled by both Thorn and Thornfield regarding the true legality and immense risks of the operation. They confirmed Thorn had assured them it was a legitimate, albeit unusually aggressive, HOA enforcement action backed by proper legal authority. Their consistent, overlapping statements painted an undeniable picture of a calculated criminal conspiracy orchestrated entirely and knowingly by Agnes Thornfield, facilitated willingly by the reckless and incompetent Thorn and his unqualified crew. Agnes Thornfield's own interrogation, conducted after she had secured high-priced legal counsel, proved far more challenging initially. Seated in a sterile interview room at the sheriff's department, flanked by her lawyer, she maintained an air of haughty, indignant innocence, relying on carefully worded denials, strategic obfuscation, claims of misunderstood instructions, and frequent interruptions from her attorney citing procedural objections. She adamantly claimed she had merely contracted Thorn security for legitimate, routine, boundary verification services and compliance assessment patrols related to vaguely defined disputed HOA common areas potentially bordering the Martell property, citing ongoing concerns about alleged encroachments, for which no prior record existed. She flatly denied any knowledge of the fake uniforms, the explicitly forged order, or any instructions whatsoever to damage private property or seize land. Her carefully constructed narrative, however, began to visibly crack and then completely disintegrate when investigators calmly, methodically presented her and her counsel with the mountain of irrefutable evidence. Thorn's detailed signed confession directly implicating her as the mastermind, the corroborating statements from all 5 crew members, the clear financial records showing the substantial payment flowing from her development company directly to Thorn specifically for this operation, Damning excerpts recovered from the drone's internal memory card showing her actively monitoring and perhaps even directing the illegal demolition via audio commands captured by the drone's microphone. And finally, incriminating communication logs retrieved from Thorne's devices explicitly discussing the plan, the fake documents, and the objective of seizing the Martel property before they could react. Faced with this inescapable cascade of evidence directly contradicting her story at every turn, her composure finally shattered, though she still stubbornly refused to take full responsibility, dissolving instead into tearful, self-pitying attempts to portray Thorne as incompetent and rogue, and herself as merely an ambitious, misunderstood businesswoman victimized by faulty contractors exceeding their mandate. It was a performance that convinced no one, least of all the experienced investigators and prosecutors in the room. The county district attorney's office, working in close collaboration with Sheriff Brody's investigative team, moved quickly and decisively to seek indictments. Based on the overwhelming and multifaceted evidence gathered, including Cal's crucial initial reconnaissance and photographic documentation, which proved foundational, the detailed confessions of all active participants, the clear financial trail linking Agnes directly to the funding, the damning drone footage, and the patently fraudulent nature of the community eminent domain order, a county grand jury swiftly handed down multiple felony indictments. Agnes Thornfield was formally indicted on a slew of serious state felony charges: conspiracy to commit grand theft by fraud and deception related to the land seizure attempt, multiple counts of forgery in the second degree for creating and possessing the fake legal order, felony vandalism for the intentional and significant dock destruction, criminal trespassing with commission of a crime, and multiple counts related to criminal solicitation and facilitation for the impersonation of law enforcement officers. Thorne faced similar primary charges as a principal co-conspirator, looking at significant prison time himself. The other 5 crew members were indicted on lesser, though still serious, felony charges including conspiracy, trespassing, and vandalism, but were quickly offered binding plea bargains by the district attorney's office contingent on their continued full cooperation and truthful testimony against both Thorne and, critically, against Agnes Thornfield at any future trial. Due to the complexity of the conspiracy, the clear evidence of significant financial transactions potentially crossing state lines through Agnes's development company's accounts, and the serious nature of the impersonation of officers, federal authorities, specifically the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division, also began actively monitoring the case, holding potential additional federal charges related to wire fraud, mail fraud, or even RICO, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, violations in reserve, depending on the ultimate outcome and complexity revealed during the state prosecution. The subsequent legal proceedings generated intense local media attention and considerable public interest, becoming a cautionary tale about HOA overreach and corporate greed. Agnes Thornfield, despite assembling a formidable and notoriously expensive legal defense team, found her lawyers' aggressive attempts to suppress key evidence, particularly Cal's photographs and Thorne's confession, or discredit prosecution witnesses consistently thwarted by the sheer volume, quality, and consistency of the evidence amassed against her. Cal's meticulous, clear photographic documentation, authenticated by expert testimony regarding the camera and lens capabilities, proved particularly devastating during pre-trial evidence hearings, painting an undeniable, moment-by-moment picture of the criminal events. Bail was initially set at an extraordinarily high amount for Agnes by the presiding judge, reflecting her considerable financial resources, potential flight risk, and the calculated severity of the orchestrated crimes. She eventually posted bond using heavily leveraged real estate assets as collateral, but her movements were severely restricted pending trial. Thorne, facing the grim prospect of decades in prison if convicted on all counts alongside Agnes, and receiving a significantly more favorable plea offer due to his early cooperation, formally accepted his deal, agreeing to plead guilty to several felonies and provide complete testimony against his former employer. Most of his crew members followed suit shortly thereafter, opting for guaranteed outcomes over the risks of trial. Facing the near certainty of a high-profile, embarrassing, and likely losing trial on multiple serious felony counts, with her former chief confederate and his entire crew lined up to testify against her under oath, and confronted with Cal's damning photos ready for impactful presentation to a jury, Agnes Thornfield, after months of exhausting legal maneuvering and facing mounting legal bills, eventually, reluctantly, accepted a comprehensive global plea agreement negotiated intensely between her defense team and the district attorney's office just weeks before her widely anticipated trial was scheduled to begin. She pled guilty to reduced but still significant counts of conspiracy to commit grand theft by fraud and felony forgery, along with several lesser included offenses, thus avoiding the unpredictable spectacle and potential humiliation of a public trial, but still ensuring substantial and meaningful legal consequences. At her sentencing hearing, the presiding judge, after reviewing the extensive case file, the pre-sentencing reports, and hearing powerful, moving victim impact statements submitted in writing by both Cal and myself detailing the violation of our home, the terror of the incident, the lasting emotional impact on our family, and the attempted theft of our legacy, delivered a scathing rebuke from the bench. He condemned her actions publicly as a brazen, calculated, greedy, and profoundly dangerous abuse of corporate influence and community position. Agnes Thornfield received a multi-year state prison sentence, significantly longer than many legal observers initially expected for a first-time white-collar defendant, reflecting the seriousness of orchestrating an armed, albeit with paintball guns, illegal land seizure through elaborate forgery and impersonation. Thorne also received a shorter but still substantial state prison sentence for his crucial role as facilitator, while the remaining crew members received sentences ranging from lengthy probation and community service to short county jail terms, along with hefty fines and restitution orders. Furthermore, as a crucial component of the sentencing agreement and related civil lawsuit settlements initiated concurrently by us and the newly reformed Serenity Lake Property Owners Association, Agnes Thornfield was ordered by the court to pay substantial financial restitution directly to us for the complete replacement cost of the destroyed dock, associated legal fees, and significant damages for the emotional distress caused by the ordeal. Critically, various assets linked directly to her meticulously planned private marina development project, including several adjacent parcels of lakefront land she had acquired nearby under ethically questionable circumstances leveraging her former HOA presidency, were targeted for civil forfeiture by state authorities as instruments or proceeds of her criminal conspiracy. This forfeiture effectively destroyed her long-held, obsessive development ambitions on Serenity Lake and served as a powerful, tangible financial penalty supplementing her incarceration, ensuring she could not simply profit from her crimes after serving her time. Back at our cabin, many months later, the deep physical scars on our property were finally, fully healing. The dock stood rebuilt, stronger, better, more resilient than before, a testament to Cal's skill, patience, and unwavering determination. The ugly memory of the orange fence was long gone, replaced by thriving native shrubs and vibrant wildflowers Chloe had carefully, lovingly planted along the restored, natural shoreline. The stressful, time-consuming legal battles were definitively concluded. Justice, though frustratingly slow at times, had been comprehensively served. Agnes Thornfield was incarcerated, stripped of her power and influence, her local business empire tarnished, her reputation ruined beyond repair. The Serenity Lake Property Owners Association, now operating under entirely new, more responsible, and genuinely community-focused leadership elected by relieved and empowered residents following the scandal, had formally apologized again, profusely, to us and had undertaken a thorough revision of its governing bylaws to implement strict ethical guidelines, financial oversight controls, and term limits, specifically designed to prevent such flagrant abuses of power from ever happening again. Cal and I stood together quietly on the rebuilt dock one tranquil, cool evening, watching Lily, now a bit older and wiser, happily skipping perfectly flat stones across the placid, glassy surface of the lake as the sun dipped slowly below the dark, imposing silhouette of the pine-covered horizon, painting the water and the evening sky in breathtaking, ephemeral streaks of fiery orange, deep purple, and soft gold. The permission slips I had been numbly signing that fateful morning seemed like an artifact from a different, more troubled lifetime, a world away. Our cherished, hard-won sanctuary had been brazenly violated, terrifyingly threatened by unchecked greed and naked arrogance masquerading crudely as legitimate authority. But it had been successfully, decisively defended, not through reciprocal violence or aggression, but through vigilance, patience, careful observation, strategic thinking, and the precise, decisive application of unique, specialized skills honed over years spent in unseen conflicts far, far from this peaceful shore. Our deed, the symbol of our ownership and belonging, remained secure and unchallenged in its fireproof lockbox. Our land, our home, remained unequivocally ours. The profound, soul-deep peace of Serenity Lake, momentarily shattered by human folly and avarice, had been definitively, satisfyingly restored, guarded now not just by the quiet, enduring beauty of the surrounding nature, but by the silent, watchful competence and unwavering protective resolve of a retired Navy SEAL sniper who simply wanted to guide fishing tours, raise his daughter, and protect his family's home.